It's me, huh? Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm here today with Jennifer, and today we're going to be talking about something that's, I'm sure everyone's seen in the news already, and it's causing a lot of fear, I'm sure, among the community, and that is the alien registration requirement.
Well, first of all, I want to say I do not personally know any aliens.
Great.
And so, based on that, I would say if you are not an alien, this does not apply to you. That would be my.
That's
I
a
wish
good
I
way to
could
say
just
it.
be that dismissive and it were that simple about.
I agree. The wording is it's just too much to handle.
It's so offensive and disgusting.
I agree, 100%.
But
So,
it is what they're using now in reference to individuals who were not born in the United States. So it is, you know, unfortunately, something that we're having to address right now too, and sometimes use ourselves, even though I hate that word. Anyways, so Elsa, can you tell us what have you been seeing? What did you see with respect to the announcement that came out yesterday?
so basically, it is asking all immigrants who are not fingerprinted or registered when applying for a visa and who remain in the United States for 30 days or longer to register and create a USCIS account so that you can get your biometrics taken, your fingerprints taken.
Yeah. So, what's the status of this right now?
There actually is not like much to go off of. It is on the USCIS website, and we do anticipate that there will be some lawsuits that they haven't formally put out any way to register.
Right. So, right now, if I was to try to go register, what would happen?
You wouldn't be, I mean, I don't think the form is active, correct?
That's right.
Right.
So, right now, what has happened is USCIS has said, we're going to do this in the future. We're going to create a new form, and you're going to need to use it to request a biometrics appointment and get registered. But that hasn't actually happened yet. And my hope is that before people are really able to do much with the form, there will be a lawsuit that could potentially block it. We saw this a lot during the first Trump administration. There was one example that I can think of right off the top of my head is that there was a big push by the first Trump administration to completely change the legal definition of public charge in the immigration law. This is something that had been defined in immigration law, in immigration jurisprudence, and in regulations and guidance for decades, that someone who's a public charge is someone who has been institutionalized at government expense for a certain amount of time, or they have relied on cash benefits from the government for a certain amount of time. And it doesn't apply if the US citizen child of a person is receiving those benefits. Like a lot of these kinds of provisions about what public charge had a very specific meaning until the first Trump administration. They tried to say, no, public charge is anyone who has used any benefit, their family members have used any benefit, or they could in the future use any benefit. The problem with that was that the president can't overwrite what Congress has already decided. And so courts said, no, like this isn't going to work. And it never took effect, but it scared a lot of people, and it scared a lot of people away from filing applications for their loved ones and their family members during that time.
Yes, I
So,
definitely think it's a scare tactic. But
yeah.
what ended up happening with that?
With the public charge, a court blocked it, and then when President Biden came into office, his administration refined the regulations in such a way that now there's more information required around the public charge question, but they didn't try to overhaul what it means. It just means people who are now applying for residency in the United States have some additional kind of background information to provide and to sort of shore up their ability to care for themselves and provide for themselves as part of the process of applying. And so that's where things stand now. I suspect that something similar could happen in this situation with respect to the registration requirement, where people are scared and whatever, but then ultimately it may not even come to pass. The other thing that is important to keep in mind is that if everyone in the United States that is described by this memo actually goes and registers, the website will probably crash, first of all. And second of all, ICE isn't going to have enough resources to go round up all these people and deport them. So,
Completely agree.
yeah. So, you know, for people, it's still the same, right? People who are in the US right now without any status are at higher risk than they were. The people who are at even higher risk are people who have an old deportation order or potentially an old criminal matter or a recent criminal matter. Criminal encounters are still the main way that people become at risk for deportation. And then the other people who are getting hammered really hard right now are people who came in legally through the pathways that the Biden administration created. And it just proves that, like, legal has a very fluid meaning with this president. People who stormed the Capitol on January 6th are to be pardoned, but people who came in through humanitarian parole are to be deported. So it's a very different kind of definition of what's legal and acceptable than what we're used to. But that's what we're dealing with right now.
I completely agree. I think the whole point of making that different or taking away benefits from people that came in here the right way is to frustrate everybody. I mean, all the undocumented people here, and even the people that have TPS, the people that have humanitarian parole. I think it really is just a scare tactic. That's not to say that maybe this will get, hopefully not, but this will be implemented. And that's why it's important to know exactly what it says.
Right.
So,
It's just going to be another moment where people are going to need, if this requirement does take effect, individuals are going to need to understand how it applies in their particular case. It's going to require a consult with your attorney, probably. There may be, at some point it may take effect, and there may be some guidance that makes it really clear. Okay, these people register, these people don't have to. Here's what's going to happen if you don't. Here's what's going to happen if you do. Right now, we don't know the answers to those questions, but not on a large scale by any means. So, yeah, it's mostly, I think, going to create a lot of worry and stress. Hopefully it won't take effect, but if it does, there will be ways to manage and navigate, just like with everything else. So I hope people don't allow their fear to become too intense or consuming around this issue. Should we get to questions, Elsa?
yes, that sounds good.
All right.
The first question is from Adela. It says, hola abogada, tengo una pregunta. Me llegó intento de negar la 1485, pero ¿qué puedo someter un I-601 por moral turpitude? Pero nomás pidieron un mes. ¿Se puede pedir más tiempo? Gracias.
Adela, eso es difícil, pero no es incomún que piden un perdón con poquito de tiempo. en mi experiencia, se puede pedir más tiempo, pero si es posible responder dentro del tiempo, eso sería lo mejor. Es incomún que va a tener la oportunidad de corresponder con el agente de una manera que se hace muy claro que sí, que le han dando más tiempo. Entonces, en mi opinión, es mejor responder primero con la más información que se pueda, por lo menos una declaración personal, la forma I-601, y cualquier evidencia que pueda juntar, el costo también del perdón, responder así con el mínimo por lo menos, y luego si hay más evidencias que quiere meter, se puede suplementar tal vez. Pero es importantísimo cumplir con ese plazo.
Ya. Yo estoy de acuerdo, creo que sería lo mejor no ir pasado la fecha límite, porque eso sí le perjudique muchísimo.
Sí, sí, y ok. Abulisundar says, my child is turning 15 by April 2025. Does she need to create a separate USCIS account in her name to register for fingerprints? So at this point, it's the only instruction that one can comply with right now with respect to this registration requirement is to create a separate account. And anyone who's 14 years or older can create a separate account. In fact, you don't even have to be 14 years or older to have an account. You just can't, like as a minor, she may still need like the assistance and guidance and authorization of a parent to be able to do it. But a separate account can be created for her. My understanding of the current information on the USCIS page is that someone who's over the age of 13 should create, or 14 rather, should create their own separate account. But I would check that again. I only just read it this morning, so I would definitely check the terms of that very carefully. It's kind of at the bottom of the USCIS announcement. There's some information in there about who needs to create an account and what to do when kids reach that age where they need to get printed. All right.
Okay, next one is Ms. Guerra. Hello, if we are waiting on 601A to be approved, but already did biometrics, do we still need to register to Trump's new program? Sorry if this question has been asked. It hasn't been asked, but no, it says if you already have applied for a benefit and have been fingerprinted, you do not need to re-register.
There was some confusing language on the page about people who have DACA or TPS needing to register. So that was weird because I thought at first there was going to be like a 100% correlation between like you've applied for something, you've gotten your fingerprints, you're registered. But then I saw that DACA and TPS, like they're being asked to register. And so I don't know. Right now it's confusing. We don't have super clear information. We just have what was published on the page, which is all speculative because we don't yet have the way to register. So at this moment, I wouldn't worry about it. But if and when something like this does take effect, then, we'll have to get, as much information as we can from the information they provide to us. I expect that there would be like a frequently asked questions kind of thing. I think USCIS will publish a lot more information about what they expect and what the guidance is. At least that's been my experience with other new programs that they've created.
Yes, I definitely think it's best to wait and see what is concretely stated on a more formal document.
Yeah. Yep. So, Rachel, my husband of 10 years had his fingerprints for PIP, then it was canceled. Now I have my I-130 application pending 19 months. Will he need to register under this? And when should this go into effect? So Rachel, we don't know exactly when this is supposed to take effect. And we don't know for sure it will survive a lawsuit, but assuming it does, if your husband has an I-130 pending, in a situation like that, I'd say there's really very little risk in going ahead and registering. If you filed your application online, then he may already have a USCIS account. If you like, as when it's a spouse filing for their other spouse, the petitioner is the U.S. citizen, and the U.S. citizen ends up with the USCIS account in that situation. The beneficiary would have to create a separate USCIS account in order to do the registration process. But if he's already submitted information and fingerprints, but you're not sure if he's registered, it would probably be fine to go ahead and register. I don't know if I didn't get the sense they're going to charge a fee for this. Did you, Elsa?
I didn't see it on the page. That is a
There
good
was
question.
no mention of a fee. Hopefully they won't be charging a fee. Because that would be then like another factor to consider, like, do you want to spend the money? Depends, of course, on how much. We'll just have to see how this all plays out. But I think, right now we don't have a lot of clarity about whether somebody who had their biometrics taken for PIP is considered registered.
Yes, and I think it's just important to remember the goal of the registration requirement is to have your information so that they could somehow capture every single person that's here undocumented. So in this case, I agree with Jennifer. It's probably not. There's no harm if you go ahead and register, but we will see.
Yeah. The other weird thing about this, Elsa, is like they say, if you've been in the United States for longer than 30 days, a lot of people have visa status for longer than 30 days. A lot of people, like most visas, give you at least 90 days at a time if you're a tourist. And then any other kind of non-immigrant visas could be like up to 3 years at a time or whatever. And so if all the people that this memo describes go to register at the same time, I don't see how the website is not going to crash.
Oh, it has to. I think it crashes even when we do regular applications.
Totally. So. Yeah. So we'll see, Rachel. We'll see. Stay tuned. Jessica asks, have you seen any changes or attempts to change the consular process? I have to say no. Well, okay, so yes and no. With respect to the majority of our clients, the consular process seems to be continuing just as before. People are getting approved. Even people with past arrests and even past like crimes involving moral turpitude, if they qualify for the right exceptions and they have their waivers in order and all that, they're still getting approved. The way that the consular process may be changing is for individuals who are transgender. That definitely seems like it is a target right now, and there's a lot of concern among people in that community about being accused of fraud. Again, I hope there's some lawsuits brewing on this because it's so wrong on so many levels. But other than the transgender community, what I'm seeing in the consular cases is that they are proceeding like they did before.
Yes,
So
I agree. I think also just to keep in mind, this is pretty new, right? It was implemented in 2013. So I wouldn't be surprised maybe in the future if it is attacked, but for now, everything stays the same.
Oh, you mean the I-601A?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a rumor before the election that I-601A was on the chopping block for this administration, and I have not seen that. In fact, I've not ever heard that coming from any reliable source that is in Washington, D.C. Our partner, Jackie Watson, is on the executive board for the American Immigration Lawyers Association. So she's in touch with people in D.C. constantly and hears, a lot about what is happening on Capitol Hill, what's happening in the White House, what the proposals are, what's coming down the pipe. And there's been nothing about the I-601A as far as I'm aware.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Adela. It says, thank you. Do you do this waivers? Yes, we do the 601. Was it the 601 or 601A?
601.
Yes, we
601 for
really
an
do.
adjustment. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We do.
Yes. So Adela, our contact information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And you can call the office and schedule an appointment with me or Elsa or any of the attorneys in our office. And we would be happy to help you deal with your waiver situation. It would be an honor. I see Green Thumb Girl in the comments. Green Thumb Girl, our favorite.
Our number one fan.
Our number one fan, my favorite fan. Good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Elsa, I don't know if you've ever
I haven't. I hear about her every single time. But
yeah. Yes, she actually sent us a card in the Austin office. I'll share it with you.
Very sweet.
So let's get back to questions. I just saw one from Sandra. Sandra, what are the consequences for failing to register? This is such a great question, Sandra.
It's a good question.
The threatened consequences include fines and potential imprisonment, prosecution for a misdemeanor, and up to 6 months in jail. However, Elsa, do you know what part of the law that comes from?
I sure don't. I don't know where it's at.
We're trying to find the legal authority for those consequences, and we are not seeing it. So this is another reason why we are thinking that the lawsuit option may have a lot of traction, because they're threatening these penalties that don't seem to have any legal authority. And no, a president can't just make those up. Those have to come from Congress. So stay tuned. And thanks for the question, Sandra. Green Thumb Girl says, my plant looks amazing. I don't know if you're talking to me or Elsa. Both of us have plants.
Mine's fake.
Elsa's little plant is peeking its head.
Yes, it is fake, but I imagine yours is real deeper.
No wonder, it looks great.
Yeah, I take care of it.
Okay, back to questions. C1, have to register. C1, is that a crew member visa? I need more clarification on your question. I would say if it's a crew member, if you're in the US for longer than 30 days, you might have to register, or according to this order, if it becomes legal. But if it's maybe a CR1 or something like that, if it's a conditional resident, okay, crew member. Yeah, so I think if this thing becomes law, which we still don't know, but if it does, and you're in the US for longer than 30 days, then technically, yeah, you need to register. But if you have the crew member visa, you should be good to go. You wouldn't need to worry about them using that information against you somehow. All right, who's got a question? Who's next?
And Guerra. Okay, yes. Is it okay if I filed I-130 for my husband since I'm petitioner for him, so USCIS account is under my name? Is it fine if I also added the 601A case to my account, or I need make account for his? You should be fine, correct?
Well, so here's my question. An I-601A cannot be filed online, first of all.
Oh.
So I don't know that I'm 100% understanding your question. And the I-601A would belong to the husband. So the whole petition, waiver, consular process kind of case goes from like the petitioner files a petition and it's their petition on behalf of their spouse, but it belongs to the petitioner. Then the potential immigrant files the application for the waiver, and that's their application, but it's based on hardship to the qualifying relative. And then the applicant in the end goes to their consular process, to their appointment. They go to their appointment. It's their appointment for them, but the petitioner has to provide some financial documentation. So there's a lot of back and forth and overlap. If you have an I-601A, that needs to be the potential immigrant's I-601A, and they would need to have their own account for that. But as far as I'm aware right now, those applications can't be filed online yet. those have to be filed the old-fashioned way. So I hope that helps. Let's see who's next. To see you. We see you a lot too. I have a question. Finally, USCIS sent an RFE saying that I'm inadmissible under 212A60 stowaway, but I entered D1. They want me to explain the entry. Is there any waiver for this, even 601 consulate? Okay. It depends on the case. And if you enter D1, I'm not sure what kind of visa that is. That might be a certain kind of visa that triggers inadmissibility if you later try to apply for a resident visa. I would say that kind of situation warrants a consult with an attorney to look at the RFE carefully with you, look exactly at the documents, because there is a possibility that the information in the RFE is just wrong, that they have mistaken the way that you entered. And so that's what you need to kind of tease out, is like exactly what are they alleging? Is what they're alleging correct or true? And if so, how do you respond? This would be a really tough environment for me to be able to respond directly to a specific question like that. So I think you, sir, need to hire for a consult. That would be my best advice. Who else is next?
The next question is Oscar Chai. Are people getting arrested by ICE at I-130 interviews? I have not seen that, and I don't think so.
So people are being called for I-130 interviews much more frequently now than they have been in several years. If you are a person who has a past deportation order or something like that, and you get called for an I-130 interview, if you're not currently in removal proceedings, I think there's a risk of detention. I haven't personally seen people get detained, and I haven't heard of colleagues saying that their clients were detained. But I also have colleagues saying, my client with the old removal order did not attend the I-130 appointment, and we provided some additional documentation of the good faith marriage so the I-130 could be approved and things like that. So I think if you have an old deportation order, it's really important to consult with an attorney and be really careful about how you're handling the I-130 interview, because there is a risk of detention even if you don't get detained. And so you need to have someone ready to manage that for you.
That's a good answer. I agree.
What else? If I-601As are taken away and there's already one approved, will it still stand? I think so, Jessica. I can't predict. Again, like, I'm terrible at predicting the future, but in my experience, like usually with things like this, they're supposed to give some lead time. And if they don't give lead time, or they try to make something retroactive, a lot of times that will trigger a lawsuit, because people were relying on the legal process as it existed for many years. That's a reasonable reliance. They didn't do anything wrong in that, and they shouldn't be punished by having things taken away. That's what the law is trying to do, is create some order and some predictability and some certainty for people. And so when a new law comes into effect that throws everything into chaos, it is subject to lawsuits. And that's why we see a lot of lawsuits. So I hope that helps. All right.
Oh, Arely Clark. If you previously had DACA and it expired, would you need to register? Should they wait to register? That is a good question. You should reapply. You should renew your DACA first. I feel like that's very important. But it was a little tricky, what it said online on the USCIS website about DACA. I think it said that they did need to, but I really can't remember.
Yeah, I would need to actually look at it again, Arely. So with DACA, if it expires for longer than a year, you're kind of out of luck right now because of the injunction. There's a court injunction that doesn't allow new applications to be processed. So people whose DACA expired more than a year ago have to make a new application, and it's really unfortunate, but those folks are kind of out of luck with their DACA. Whether or not you need to register is a separate question. And again, I would need to reread the instructions on the site because I found them a little confusing when I just sped read them this morning. But I think right now, you don't have to worry about it because it's not in effect right this second. If it comes into effect, then I would say take care to read carefully on the USCIS website, consult with a trusted attorney before you make a decision about how you want to proceed on that.
I do see it. It does say on who is not registered. It says those who submitted one or more benefit requests to USCIS, including DACA recipients. So I think you might still need to.
I just don't understand how that jives with the other parts where it says you applied for a benefit. But I guess since DACA and TPS are not technically visas, maybe, I don't know. In any case, hopefully we'll get more clarity as time goes on. Is it just to track the case? Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. And I understand what you mean. So if the 601A, so I think what Anna's saying, for anyone who doesn't know, is you, even for applications that you file through the old-fashioned way through the U.S. Postal Service, you can still get the receipt number entered on your USCIS account and track through your USCIS account the status of the case. And so for that, if that is working on the way your current account is configured, I wouldn't worry about it. I don't think there's any issue with that, as long as if it's functioning well for you, then you're doing it right. That website can be really finicky and fussy and glitchy if you're doing anything wrong. So if it's working, I think you're doing it right. That's the best advice that I have on that one. All right, Ruben, if you have come to the US legally but overstayed and are out of status, but are in the US for more than 15 years, do we have to register under this new policy? What do you think about that, Elsa, that question?
I think that is a good question because it says that those who have had visas previously don't need to re-register, but I don't know. We would have to wait for something more formal to come out.
Yeah. It's not super clear at this moment. And so, but if you entered on a tourist visa and overstayed, I mean, I think, their aim is to get current information on people, right? So I think that it might be that they want you to register, and it's going to be important for you to understand risks and benefits in that situation, when you are making decisions about whether to do it. Now, if there are criminal penalties or civil penalties in the future that actually do take hold, that will be a factor. We'll also have to see whether this information about registration is something that USCIS begins to take into consideration when they're adjudicating applications. Like, are they going to start denying applications for people who didn't register? That's going to be really important to pay attention to. But again, all of this is so speculative. And first, it's going to have to get through the gauntlet of the courts. And that is going to be a big challenge, I think, for anything like this. So we'll just have to see that. And now this registration stuff has existed already in the Immigration Nationality Act. What hasn't ever existed, though, I don't think, are these penalties that they're talking about. So it's kind of, it's been in the Immigration Nationality Act since the 1940s. But it's not really enforceable, right? It hasn't ever been really enforceable because now CVIS was another registration program, and that one was more enforceable. That one did come with penalties, but that was something that Congress passed, the penalties, right? And that was something that happened after 2001, after 9/11, for certain individuals from certain countries were required to register, and that if they didn't, they got in trouble, and some people were removed from the US because they didn't comply. But this other registration requirement that Trump is trying to just pull out doesn't have those kind of penalties, and the president can't just invent those kinds of penalties. So for that reason, I think this is going to be it's going to be a while before this takes effect, if at all. At least that's what I hope. I have proven to myself repeatedly that I'm terrible at making predictions. So I want to give y'all that grain of salt too. My predictions kind of are terrible. You know, I never predicted that we would be under a Trump presidency in the very first place.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. All right. Who's next?
A lawyer posted that this policy is in the INA. However, other administration didn't enforce. Is that true?
Yes, because it's not enforceable if there's no penalty attached, right? So how do you enforce? It says, yes, this, you know, people are supposed to do this, but it doesn't say if you don't, then you'll go to jail. Or if you don't, now the executive order or the USCIS information is saying that, but we're still trying to find the legal authority for that. I'm not sure what they're going to allege as the legal authority for that. We'll have to see. Yeah. My spouse went through biometrics appointment with Biden's parole in place program, and that was struck down. Do those folks still need to register? So yeah, we were talking about this a second ago. Maybe if your spouse has an I-130 or an I-601A or something like that, then they may not need to. But if they don't have any other benefits, they might. We're still not sure. That's a question that remains open right now based on the information that we have. So we'll just have to see.
Next one. Attorney theory is this registration to slow down persons already on a path to legal status, given that the limited resources will be instructed to force on this registration rather than benefits.
So I wouldn't be surprised, RK, that, I mean, what we saw during the first Trump administration is that a lot of processing times slowed way down because a lot of resources were diverted to fraud investigations. Fraud investigations, which turned up very little, by the way. The amount of fraud in the immigration system is actually extremely small. I mean, honestly, the sort of fraudulent stuff that I tend to see is more, unfortunately, tragically perpetrated by attorneys. Fake asylum applications, the whole kind of sassy teenager VAWA phenomenon has been really disturbing because in order to qualify for VAWA, you have to show abuse or extreme cruelty. And extreme cruelty is a form of abuse. It's a form of control. It's a form of reducing the humanity of another person. It is not a sassy teenager. It's not a teenager who's just in a bad mood. That is not going to qualify for VAWA, and that is going to end up compromising the VAWA program for everyone and leading to some individuals getting in trouble for filing those kinds of cases when that's clearly not the intention of the program. This registration thing, we'll have to see if it takes effect. I really don't understand how they are going to try to enforce this. Hopefully it won't divert too many resources. So far, thankfully, what we are seeing as of today is that USCIS processing times continue to actually improve since the time of the pandemic and are not slowing down. So hopefully that will continue. We'll just have to see. And with that, I am tired of hearing myself talk. I hope everyone stays safe. I hope everyone stays well informed. I encourage everyone to share this video, subscribe to our newsletter, get information, curate your sources of information carefully. Don't just go on TikTok and listen to panic and fear mongering. It's really bad for us. And right now we need to take really good care of ourselves to be ready for everything that's coming. So curate your news sources carefully. Don't get too freaked out. Know that you can respond rather than react. And be in touch if we can help you at all. Adela, our calendars are really full. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it can take a little time, but don't delay. Get in there, get an appointment scheduled as quickly as you can. And we will see you next week on Wednesday at noon. Be back for more information. Thank you, Elsa, so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. We will see everybody next Wednesday.
Yes. Beautiful. Talk to you soon.